go into the academy, stay away from community colleges, and primarily teaching institutions where you're teaching 4 or 5 classes per semester. You want to run from those, okay? Because if you go that route, you'll be miserable. Ideally, you want to go into a research-oriented institution where you're teaching, some institutions maybe 3 courses, like your elite colleges, very wealthy colleges. They have a lot of money. They'll recruit you well. But that's my point on the So, Norm, why don't you say something about your experience?
Yeah, just briefly, I think my story of going, first of all, welcome everyone. It's great to see you. And, I think we both see this as the beginning of a conversation. So if there are things you want to follow up with us on, or you want to have another session like this, I'm sure Glenn would be happy to organize that for us. So I'm also a professor in political science here, Norman Sandridge. I recently moved from the classics department here at Howard, where I was for 16 years prior to that. And what I was going to say is my story of going to grad school really drives home one of the major points that I want to make to you, and that is the choice to go to graduate school should be a deeply personal and deeply reflective one. Studies suggest that most undergraduates pick their majors either because that's what their parents tell you to major in, or that's what your friends are majoring in, or you saw someone on TV who was doing this. And I'm not saying that's true of all of you, but it tends to be much more external. And what I'm saying is for grad school, it should be a much more internal thing because you are going to be anchored to the profession that you choose to go into through grad school for a while. You may be anchored to the debt that you get into, but you will also be anchored to certain career choices. And to tell you what I did in this, my undergraduate was in physics and mathematics. I thought I was going to be an astronaut when I was your age, and a cosmologist. I thought I was going to study origins of the universe and things like that. But when I was a sophomore, I had an amazing Latin professor who introduced me to ancient languages and the study of the ancient world, and I became more and more convinced that it was through the study of the humanities side of liberal arts, literature, philosophy, political theory, all the things that we need to understand one another better and to communicate and to empathize with one another. I felt like that was what we needed much more. And even though I was vocationally set up much better to go to grad school in space plasma physics, that's what one of my advisors was grooming me to become that. I did a lot of soul searching at the time, and I said, I really want to commit myself to humanities type field and helping us grow as people. Nobody needs me to make the next iPhone. Nobody needs me to make a rocket ship to the stars, but I feel like people, might need me to teach and help us, think better like that. So that's what drove me to that decision. So I went from a physics major to studying ancient languages. I was in graduate school for 8 years because I had to gain proficiency in Latin and in ancient Greek, and I wrote a dissertation on all of that. But as Dr. Harris is saying, I think it is the greatest field to be in for all the reasons that he said, and also because teaching is really rewarding and wonderful because you get a new crop of fertile and enthusiastic. Not all of them are fertile and enthusiastic, but a lot of exciting minds semester after semester, and you get a chance to make a significant difference in at least some of their lives. And I'm a gardener when I'm not being a professor, and so I love growing things, I love nurturing things, and being a professor is an opportunity to do that with students, and it's also an opportunity to do that with ideas through my research. I like publishing things that get people thinking and talking, and as I say, that's immensely gratifying. So my main takeaway is that I really encourage you all to use this opportunity for deep reflection and do something that you want to do and that you believe in, and that is not something that you have been groomed for or encouraged to do by parents or friends or society at large. This is now about you owning this decision and taking a lot of time to decide that. And as Dr. Harris was saying, if you need another year to do that, or if you need 5 years to do that, there's nothing, as long as you're still reflecting and thinking and looking for your moment, I think that's fine. Don't jump in. Some students come to me sometimes and they just say, well, I hear law school is a good thing to do. I hear you can do a lot of things with a law degree. And I'm like, what is it? Anything you want to do? And then they're usually they have nothing to say. They've been conditioned to believe you need a law degree because that's what people do. Well, this is a time to be more serious about that. Grad school is not more college. You are not signing up for a subject. You are signing up for a profession, and you should be ready for that profession, or you should want that profession. Yeah, should we go down the list here? And we can.
Anybody want to?
Yeah, or we can ask questions.
Feel free to intervene, questions, comments, clarification, informal.
Yeah.
So there's no like out of place. There's no wrong answer, wrong question, right question kind of thing. We just want to share our experiences. Hopefully, it's helpful. For me, I was a political science undergrad major. I went to Ohio State. Like every political science major you bump into, everybody wants to go to law school. I was the same. But I didn't go straight to law school. I ended up moving. I have an uncle who lives in Miami. We had a family reunion. He just popped the question, hey, you want to move to Miami? I had just graduated from Ohio State. I was like, yes! I've never been to Florida, and I live. Okay, cool. I had $60 in my pocket, a suitcase, and got on a plane. And ended up 3 years down there. My uncle, he was a VP at a university. He got me a job. He got me a little job on campus. And because I was working there, I was able to take classes 6 hours. So I was always in classes. And then I saw Ron Walters on TV talking about Black politics. And I had already been, my consciousness has, young people may have an event or something happening in the world that pricks your consciousness. Suddenly you become woke. I use the term y'all use today. That's what happened to me. But Howard State was getting woke faster because of the kind of person you don't get woke fast at Ohio State. And I did it on my own. I mean, I remember as a senior, me and my roommates sitting around getting graduated. And we started thinking about what our experiences was. Now, I was waking up at the time. And so I got very upset because I started reflecting on what I didn't get, and I was not happy. So, and I'm talking about in terms of African American experience, history. And I wasn't a history major. Political science, you're not going to get those things. So I just, Ohio State has one of the best library systems in the world. And and the main library has a section called the Black Studies Library. They've changed it since then, but it was a big, like half of the floor was devoted to materials on Black experience. So I would just go there every day during the summer, pulling books off the shelf, reading. And so I say all that to say, so I was sort of prepared to hear what Ron Walters was saying. He was a professor here at Howard. He was teaching Black politics. And that's when the light bulb went off in my mind. So I knew I wanted to come here. I applied to like 4 other places, but this is the only place I wanted to come because of him. I wanted to study. He was, Ron Walters is many consider him the dean of Black politics in terms of Black politics scholars. He's number one. He's number one. And he was just a little background. So he was Jesse Jackson's deputy campaign manager in his run for president in 84 and 88. And so he already had a national profile based on the work he was doing in these presidential campaigns. So I see him on TV being interviewed, and I was just, I got to go there. That's what I got to study it. And I am so happy that I did. It's like the best decision I've ever made. And then when I got my first teaching position at UConn, right after grad school, I knew this. That first semester, I was pinching myself. Wait a minute, how? You only got, right away you realize lifestyle is it. It's like, and when I go home to Ohio and I can't talk about uncles and aunties, they get mad at me. I tell them, I teach 2 courses a semester, and I tell them I have to stop myself because everybody else works 8 hours a day. Everybody else is taking orders from other people. Not everybody, y'all know that. 70% of the people. Okay. Work for somebody else. You become a professor, you work, you're your own CEO. You're your own. Okay, so my experience was, I'm so happy I'm not a lawyer, and I'm so happy I'm a teacher. It's like I don't know how to explain it. You know how the preachers would say, I've been called, kind of thing. You'd be calling it. Your talent is what you really call it. You can say it that way. It just fits me. I knew it like from the beginning when I started teaching. And by the way, I knew it in graduate school. And in Ron Walters, this is what compelled, because I came here initially, I said, I'm gonna go get a master's degree, and I'm gonna go back and work in the community. And my mindset was on community organizing. And because I was, but anyway, in my second year getting my master's, Ron Walter was walking up 6th Street, and he said, you know what? He started commenting on my writing. He said, I'm not trying to flatter you, but you need to get a PhD and be a professor. And nobody else had to say anything to me. That was it. He's my mentor. He's the example that we all look to. That was it. And I'm so happy. I'm not kidding. I'm so happy. Because I wouldn't have fit. I could have probably been an okay lawyer, but I know I'm not one that goes like trying to get things. If you're a lawyer, you got to do that, right? I can't. I'm not a salesman. I'm not a salesman, so I'm really horrible at that. But this, oh my gosh, and we need more doing this. That's the other part of it.
Well, that's really wonderful and inspiring. I love you share these stories. When I was in Dr. Harris's same place, I sort of began the process by knowing that I wanted to be a professor. Like that, for me, that was the starting point. And that doesn't mean that's where any of you are. Maybe some of you are. I hope some of you are. But I knew I wanted to be a professor. I had many good professors as an undergraduate. One of them was the Latin professor that I mentioned a moment ago. Great mentor to me. So I kind of had a very clear picture of what I wanted to become. I knew it was going to could take 10 years to get there. So the next step, if you know that's what you want to be, you have to go to a graduate program that's going to get you there, or at least create the opportunity for you to get there. And for me, at the time, I was doing a PhD in classics. There was an understanding that there were 3 things that would recommend you for a professorship. One would be the prestige of the school that you went to. Was it a top-ranked research institution? Another thing would be the prestige of your advisor. So, for example, you could go to a school that maybe wasn't per se as prestigious, but there are professors at schools all over the country who are great, and they're very nurturing and they're very supportive, and they know how to get you ready to be a professional. So, at the school, professors or an advisor, and then it's your own work that you do. It's possible to go to a less well-known school, not have the greatest advisor in the world, but write a dynamic and powerful and earth-changing dissertation. and go to conferences and build yourself a reputation. If you're very social and you can build that, you're good to go that way. So those kind of three things, and also your teaching portfolio. If you know that you want to be a professor, it's good to go to a graduate program where you would have some opportunity to teach. And that honestly, that's what got me the job at Howard University. When I came here in 2005, I was out of the box teacher, you might say. I had already taught a dozen classes as a grad student, and they knew they were not going to have to groom me or coach me or anything. Just put me in front of a classroom with students, and I was going to know how to manage a class fairly well. I'm still always learning as a teacher, but I was well prepared for that. So knowing what the role was, I worked backwards and said, okay, I need to go to a known school, work with professors who are going to prepare me, and I'm going to do the work. I'm going to try to write a compelling thesis and build a teaching portfolio. And to get there, I applied, I think, to maybe 8 schools, and I went to the one that gave me the most money. It also happened to be a good, a pretty prestigious one. It was a top 5 school for classics at the time. But they gave me more money than some of the other top schools, so I went with that rather than get into massive debt. Welcome, Dr. Perry. We are sharing stories about. When it comes to up here, we're on camera here. Would you share your story about picking a grad school? Go for you.
Sure.
Decided.
So I applied to 30 graduate schools. So I'll start with that. I was privileged to have parents who funded my graduate application and also funded much of my undergraduate research experience that got me interested in graduate school. So every year as an undergrad, I went to conferences, and particularly the National Conference of Black Political Scientists. I won undergraduate awards at conferences, and those spaces gave me the interest of going to graduate school. It honed that interest further. Because I simply realized I wanted to learn more about some of these ideas that I was really interested in. At the time, I was really interested in studying what do Black folks do in predominantly white spaces for Black people, and particularly as political scientists, interested in what do Black politicians do, predominantly white jurisdictions for their minority Black residents with whom they share a racial experience. And that's my area of expertise generally. And I realized that graduate school was the only place that I could hone that expertise. But I had a lot of different options. I could do a PhD in political science. I could have done a PhD in urban studies. Could have done one in public policy. Could have done Black studies. Could have done ethnic studies. And all would have resulted in perhaps the same kind of project. So I ended up applying to 30 schools, but I did decide I wanted to do political science. And the reason why I was keen on that is because I was trained by the first person to get a PhD in our department here, named Walton, was my advisor when I was in college, who trained me to think about political questions in the Black experience, and to do so through the lens of culture, but also through the lens of institution, and understanding that how Black power is in fact maximized through our American political institution or not. And so I was hooked as a result of Professor Walton and going to graduate school. But one other caveat was that I did not have a letter. He would refuse to write a letter to me to go to law school. He was my #1 advisor. Like I took all of his classes, got A's from all those kinds of things. Great advisor. The reason why I have time for political science today, in many ways. But still, yeah. So I was encouraged by my undergraduate professor, and then I was lucky, fortunate enough that my parents supported my undergraduate research endeavors, which got me in the community of academia and understanding graduate school and what graduate life might be like more. So how did I end up with 30 graduate applications? I applied to the top 10 political science schools. So I wanted to do that just to see what would happen. And in American politics, I was already at University of Michigan, which is the #1 allegedly rankings in terms of American political science, the narrow ways in which we define that field. And so I was there. They did not let me in their graduate program, I would say. So I got 27 rejection letters, and I got into 3 schools. And I love telling the story because I had to, essentially cry 27 times. And but lo and behold, I got the best opportunity in one of those 3, and ended up getting a full ride to Brown University, where ironically, my advisor at Brown was a former student of my advisor at Michigan, who was the first person to get their PhD here at Howard. So the connections just kept growing for me at Brown, and I was able to finish there in 3.5, 4 years and got a PhD when I just turned 27 a couple of days.
You ready for a 45-minute answer?
Yeah, my bad. My bad. My bad.
Uniform class started with that right now. So but look back at your experience.
Actually, do have a short answer to this, and I'll let my colleagues talk. So I went to graduate school with a 9 to 5 attitude. All my classes on my first semester were on Monday, ironically. So they were 1 day a week classes. So I had classes from like 8 a.m. for my first semester of graduate school on Monday. What am I going to do the rest of the week? And so I had an attitude of treating it like a 9 to 5 job. So I wake up every day and I'd be doing something related to the next paper or the next reading, or I'd be developing a group dynamic and relationship with a student colleague because you don't have time to do all the reading. You're supposed to read like 2,000 pages by the next week. You're expected to be in that room with that knowledge, but I will give you the hint. Professors don't necessarily expect you to have read it all. They expect you to be able to speak intelligently about it, and you can receive all the information if you do really well with processing. So if you treat it like a 9 to 5, doesn't matter if you think you have time, you really don't have that much time. The papers and a lot of work that it requires, a higher level of skill set that we expect in graduates. But if you do treat it like a job, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, if you are fortunate to be in a funded program that doesn't require you to work, which is a fortune. If that's the case, then you will find that you have kind of great weekends. You have time to live a full life if you spend that Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 time working on your graduate education.
I was supported. I had a fellowship. The tuition was not what it is today. So in DC at that time, wow, it was amazing. And again, Ron Walters was here. That was the attraction for me. But so for me, in terms of how I approached, especially my first year, because I knew I don't do this, I'm not going to have support next year. So, and I wasn't working. That's key. Have a job. My job was to be a student. And so I was a TA when I came as well. So the library opened at 8 o'clock. I was there at 8 o'clock in the morning. Every day. And I would be there for 2-3 hours until I had to go to my class that I TA for, usually in the afternoon. So I get my break, like a lunch break kind of thing. And then I go back to the library and I would stay till like 7 or 8. And then I went home. I would do that every day. And this is what I did to sort of come down from all of that. I read, my first year, I think I read 3 of Toni Morrison's novels. I read Gloria Naylor, a novel that she never retired. I read like 5 novels that year. that was my way of coming. So I would, I would go home and I would read for an hour and a half, because that was a way of, and not a novel, fiction, not heavy, full of sciencey stuff. That's how I handled it, and I did it every day. And then once I got used to it, it was easy to do. Dr. Perry is right about the reading. They will just dump stuff on you, and you're like, I can't read all this time next week. When you develop, I know I shouldn't say this, you develop STEM skills. You have to. And you try to like figure out, okay, what can I get from this reading that's 100 pages long without reading the 100 pages, all of the 100. You got to read some of them, and you just learn how to do that. You learn how to do that. You got to pace yourself on your papers, because I learned how to write in graduate school. I really, really learned how to write in graduate, not because someone was correcting my writing, because I was doing so much of it. So I was a pretty decent writer coming in, but writing so much all the time made me get better and better and better. So that will happen to you in graduate school as well. And I'm going to start there. But overall, my graduate school experience was like the greatest stretch of years of my life. I mean, I'm not kidding. I didn't have money, but you have a cohort that you're with, and at the time, I had Ron Walters, Robert Smith was here.
The golden age.
They were all here. The Giants, right? And it was just amazing. And Matt Jones had just left. Hayes was Savannah State at the time before Michigan. But that's the context of which I came into it. I came in through what we call sort of like the founders, if you will, of the work that we did. And as I told you, Ron Walters, you could put Hayes Walton in there. My giants are Hayes, Ron Walters, Mac Jones, Robert Smith, that was Hayes Walton. And they all right here. And I had a chance to, sit at their knees and absorb their teaching. They were amazing. They're absolutely amazing. So that's why I was, take some care in picking where you're going to go next. Because one part of it be enjoyable. You don't want to be, high anxiety all the time and not having any enjoyment out of the experience. And some places, they may have good programs, but it may not fit you. It may not fit you. Like I said, a lot of these places are out in the sticks. And you don't want to be out in the sticks. You probably shouldn't go out in the sticks. No matter what school is out there. Okay? Unless you steel yourself and say, okay, I could do this for 5 years. I could do this for 6. So.
Just very briefly, I will say, I would encourage you to turn your question on to the grad students who are already in the programs you're considering going to. When I was in grad school, we actually, as grad students, we prided ourselves on being able to we wanted the best graduate students. If somebody had 3 other options, we took it as a point of pride that we lured them away and came to our program. We were very competitive about that. We wanted great grad students, and we were very honest with each other and with ourselves about the demands and expectations. In terms of my own, so when you've been accepted to programs, and if there's an opportunity for an on-campus visit, ask to meet some of the grad students, ask them to take you to lunch or dinner, and pose this question to them. Because I'll tell you, when I was in graduate school, this was before the field of classics had become particularly specialized. So the expectation was you needed to know everything about the Greco-Roman world, from history to rhetoric to art history to architecture to philosophy, and that no one had really sorted. I mean, it was a ridiculous amount to expect anybody to know. Nobody had sorted that out. And me coming as an outsider with a physics degree, I just assumed like, okay, I need to be doing this wall to wall all the time. And I was probably right in terms of how competitive it was and how prepared I needed to be. But I had several graduate because I can remember one in particular saying to us at our orientation, if you find yourself going out on Friday nights very often, grad school is probably not for you. And he said it just like that. He said, you know, if you think grad school is a time for leisure, then it's not for you. But again, it varies from program to program. I'm sure it's even different in the programs that I was in now. So the key takeaway here, I think, is get to know your place, wherever it is you want to go, and talk to other students.
During that time, what should we be doing specifically to ensure on acceptance?
Good. So I was thinking, you know, I think it's a good thing to do, but I know most young people aren't thinking like that. But I knew for me it's very valuable not to like go straight into it, because it allowed me to really reflect on what I wanted to do 10, 15 years ago. Even then, you don't know sometimes, you know. At these ages, you know, you're early 20s, you know, you really don't know. If you have a liberal arts education, this is important stuff, because you're not trained in a specialized way yet. That's the next step you're trying to sort out. That's the context I'm suggesting. It's not a bad thing to take a little time to sort that out, 1 year, 2 years, whatever it takes to do. Some people may just be okay to just go right in. But the kinds of things, I suppose just to follow up the question, which is what kinds of things you do. You know, you want to have relationships with people who write letters for you, letters of recommendation. You have to write a statement of interest. You should have one of your professors who you develop a relationship with in classes. Ask someone to read your statement before you sit down. Those little things like that are helpful. Someone did that for me. Matter of fact, the professor approached me and said, okay, you're going to grad school, this is how I'm going to help you. I'm going to want you to write, and he had me over a month, submit it, he would rip it up, submit it again, he would rip it, it was tight. That's someone who just took an interest in me, helping me to get to grad school. So letters of recommendation are key. You need 3 of those. So you should be thinking about who can write letters from your undergrad program. You want them from a professor, not from your job. Give you to speak about your intellectual capability at that time. There was a part of your question I think I may have missed.
You need to be writing during that time. You need to be writing during that time. You have to submit a writing sample to get to grad school. Okay? I had a horrible GRE. I mean, horrible. If it was based on GRE, I would not be sitting here. And so, but the professor saw my writing, and it was the writing. I wrote a 40-page paper in undergrad. I wrote 2 or 3 of them. So there, through an independent study, working with the professor over the summer while I was doing an internship. You do the same thing here. If you build those relationships and professors and guys who get academic credit for it while doing it, then that helps, that prepares your writing sample. I knew I was going to get a PhD after a certain point, after my junior year, and so I began to prepare accordingly. I knew I would need a writing sample, and I knew that my 10, 15-page papers in undergrad would not be sufficient, because most graduate programs in arts and sciences, at least, tend to want 20+ page products, and it needs to be your best work that demonstrates you are contributing to new knowledge. That's PhD is a research degree if you choose to go in that route. So there are other degrees you can get. All kinds of graduate degrees you can get, but if you choose to go the PhD route, it's a research degree, and so they're looking for whether or not you can contribute to new knowledge.
Yeah, just to build off that, I would say partly it depends on why you're taking time off. If the reason is financial, then you probably know what you should be doing during that year, maybe paying down student loan debt or whatever. If it's because you haven't decided yet, you don't feel strongly in one direction or another, try to think of things that would clarify your decision. If you're thinking about law school versus grad school, maybe you want to work as a paralegal or an intern or something at a law firm to get a clearer picture picture there. Maybe you want to audit a few graduate courses or something here in DC that you could sit in on and gain clarity. But if the issue is you want to build, like, let's say you don't feel like you have the strongest case to make for being accepted to a top tier program, and you want to do exactly what Dr. Harris and Dr. Perry are saying here in terms of like building all of that up. And just to highlight one of the points in this document number 5, it talks about craft a personal statement that argues for your admission to the program based on your achievements rather than your hopes and dreams. You want to feel like, and you can even contact programs about it. You can reach out to somebody at a program that you want to get into and say, hey, do you usually expect a 40-page research paper from an undergraduate? You know, what kind of GREs do you expect? Do you expect students to have done internships? What are the achievements that really catch the eyes of these programs? And doing a little research can often give you a very clear picture of what you need to do.
Programs are competitive, I would just add, so depends on where you go. Some programs in law school, master's schools, you might have hundreds of different options and very few competing applicants. In other situations, you may have the opposite. If you're applying for a PhD at a top institution, you know, that provide full funding for all their students, they get about 200 applicants every year per program for about 8 to 10 funded seats. So most people who apply do in fact get rejected. I'm a pragmatist, which is why going back to why I applied to multiple places, want to expand my reach. Didn't mean I would get any of them. But that's something you might want to keep in mind, that when it comes to elite programs where you may not have the challenge of having to make any final graduate school, they provide funding for you. Just know that the competition is stiff. All of the letters are going to be great for other candidates, right? So that's where your personal statement really does matter a lot in terms of you talking about your achievements, your background, your motivation, your determination for doing this work. That's what really sets you apart, because everyone else is going to have probably equally great student achievements in terms of GPA and et cetera. And it's hard sometimes. You know, we've been on the side, both sides of the equation of being the student, but also seeing applications come through. And it's an interesting, position to be in when you have a hard decision to make about, 2 great people, but you only bring in 1.
Well, and that's actually a really good point. Both for psychological and practical reasons, you shouldn't think that because you didn't get in this year that you are ineligible of matriculating at that school. It's quite possible that it came down to a flip of a coin, or maybe the cohort was smaller that year. You might reapply in the next year and get full funding and be the golden student of the department. So don't take a psychological hit just because you didn't get in, and don't give up because you might make it next time. That's totally possible.
So I'd say one of the developments that's happening right now is higher ed grad programs are moving away from theory. Now, I don't know, I can't give you a number. This has been going on for a while. I think Duke or North Carolina, one of them. I remember this program 7 or 8 years ago. The dean of the grad school had an invited speaker, a dean of one, either Duke or North Carolina. He's saying from the stage, they're not requiring a GRE down there anymore. I was like, what? So, like, even our program, we no longer require a GRE. Okay. Now, it used to be we wanted people to take it because the grad school had to report the data to the National Science Foundation. Like every year, they have to do a report, and those scores were part of it. So they wanted applicants to take it, but didn't necessarily want us to count them as part of the application process. Now, I don't even know if they take it. I think
Yeah, in terms of GRE is, first of all, it's a computer-based program now. Scoring system has changed since any of us were in school. So just know those two facts. The entire University of California system does not require the GRE. Several elite institutions have indicated publicly that it is no longer required, or it is significantly lowered in terms of how much they rely on it. But these test scores, I would argue, GRE, LSAT, whatever it may be, they're helpful to take if you can. And I was chuckling when you asked the question earlier because to me, it's never too early to study for these exams. That's the unfortunate nature of it. You can always study. You can get a tutor. You can do the Kaplan or Princeton or whatever the programs are you want to do, or do it on your own. But I don't think it hurts to do it. You don't have to report it if you don't want to. After you get the score back, that's all optional. Or you can choose to report it to certain schools where you're applying to if you want. The reason why I say it may be useful to consider, even though I hate standardized tests, there's all kinds of negative racial implications. I'll put that out there. But one reason why, again, as a pragmatist, it might be useful because if you're trying to be competitive via the small number of eligible seats, then it may not, but it might be that one thing that puts you apart from other students. Maybe another student does particularly great, amazing thing, but your GRE score was 5 points higher. That might have been the thing that got you in and didn't get the other student in, but you don't know. So if it doesn't hurt you to apply, then I'd encourage you to attempt to do so and just see how you do on these standardized tests. But I do think the institutions that have said that they're moving away from it are communicating kind of what their values are. And what we have learned is that graduate education is not dependent on your GRE score. There have been constant examples of folks who got in to graduate school who had horrible standardized test scores and outpaced and outperformed those who had the better standardized test scores that professors assumed would have been more good. So it's not the be all end all, but it might be strategically useful to take it.
Let me, can I just introduce you? This is, I'm going to introduce you all to Dr. Joe Grant. Sorry. The reason I'm introducing him is because he was recognized 2 years ago, I believe, that he got his PhD in our department. So he was featured in the Howard Vice, whatever that publication. President, figure age, earning a PhD because they're really generous. Like I just want to clear
Mike, saying a little bit about what you do. He does important work here in DC on behalf of Black people.
you can turn my face. Am I right?
Hey,
Yeah. I remember what it was like when I was considered an internship and needed money. So I appreciate that, Dr. Harris. Good to see everybody. Gentlemen, I came out at a much later age than most students. Coming to Howard had been my lifelong dream. I graduated from high school. I was the smartest kid, so I had to go someplace else to get a master's and then get a minute. But without taking steps, that's and really had a great career. Really warm faculty, academically as great as any place else. And you'll get a whole different experience that you may or may not have. Feels more like families have real interest in what that becomes important because pursuing graduate work counts. So knowing that if the structure of faculty have your back will make a big difference in peace of mind of trying to navigate this new world. I serve now as the Chief Operating Officer for the National Black Caucus of State Legislature. So my research interests the state legislature and legislature. So I work for the national now, Chief Operating Officer. I had a long career before that as a lobbyist and so that work we're doing now is really work that's geared toward trying to make sure that state policymakers are in tune with the latest information, trend research, so that when they make policy decisions, they are making them with the best information. And that they also have the opportunity to be proactive instead of simply reactive. I don't know how much you know about the legislative field, but very often Black state legislators get information when it's time to make a decision. They don't have much luxury of knowing in advance about the issue. They have to depend on legislature-sponsored research entities to provide information for them. And those research entities are always skewed towards the party that's in control of that change. So our organization desires to offer a different perspective. It's perspective that is specifically geared towards the Black people. We're developing a public policy research institute, and we're going to come to Howard and House for us. It would be a great opportunity to really deal with policymakers at the state level. And the trend now is to shift everything again back to the state level. So that kind of policy development is going to be really important.
I'll just echo for the sake of highlighting Dr. Grant's work that I like her political representation. State legislatures are the issues that most Americans don't realize, but most of the issues that they care about come from. They're aware of the anti-CRT world, right? Where everyone's going around trying to say that you don't want to teach a graduate legal concept in cases, but they're talking about ethnic studies, but nonetheless, they use anti-critical race theory. Well, who controls state curriculum? Who do you think controls state curriculum? State Board of Education. Who appoints the State Board of Education? Some states, state legislatures, other states, government. The point being that it's at the state and local level where most of our power resides. So only what's happening at that level. And unfortunately, the petition of Columbia is trying to become a state. Other thoughts about graduate education? And we're always available. We don't have any questions now. We're around. I'm here all the time.
In your long career, certified, have you encountered students that have flawed? And what are your general thoughts on?
I have been limited in the field of plastics, but my only piece with that is that I think this applies to probably to law schools and grad schools to some extent as well. If people do graduate work, let's say in the field of plastics, but then may be limited in the applicability, like how that degree will be received. You know, if you go get a degree in Spain or something, it might be the greatest political science program in Spain, but if you come back to the United States and apply in the state of Washington at a state school for a political science degree, they may look at that. They may think it's like amazing, like, wow, you're bringing so much diversity and experience, or they may say, we don't know what to make of this because we don't know any of these professors. We don't really know what the coursework was about. They can obviously read your dissertation, but things like that might slow them down in getting to know you, and that even that slowness can give somebody else an advantage over you. So that would be the only thing I would think about. And again, I'll turn this into general advice. When you are applying to these schools, be sure to ask about their success in placing people or the kinds of jobs you want to do. If you want a postdoc, or if you want to be a professor, ask the school directly, ask anyone who will talk to you, ask the other grad students, what has been the success in the last 5 to 10 years? If they have data on this or even anecdotal information, that's really valuable. So, just find that, and they should be able to tell you. And if they don't tell you, then that can be worrisome in itself. So, just get as much intel locally as you can on their success, and that should answer your question.
Please study abroad first, may help. Study abroad is obviously always at the university. And so you can just while you're there, experience that university, check out the university area, how that might work. There are a lot of degree programs that do transfer pretty easily. All the American universities do, the American University of Paris, American University from all those degrees pretty much transfer pretty easily. But Dr. Sanders is absolutely right that a lot of the degrees she's made now, we do know for a fact that the way law is studied in the European Union is not how it's studied here in the United States. And degrees different, and the number of years of studies are different as well. And therefore, the sequence of what you're learning is different. So that's why it might be complicated to then go get a degree there and then try to apply it in a U.S. context. But it may or may not be, but it's up to you. And I think that there's 3 or 4 countries that I'm pretty sure of that have offer pre-graduate degrees for American citizens. If you get in and you get accepted, so something to worth considering. Whether it's a master's program or a PhD or a law school, the best graduate education is the funded.
Well, to build on that point a little bit, one of the recommendations here is if you're not going to get fully funded in a program, you want to make sure all the other grad students are also not fully funded. If you enter into a program where you're one of the few who's not fully funded, I experienced this when I was in grad school. I eventually became fully funded, but when I got there were other students who were preferred over me, and that you can see that preference persist. They think of me, we've got these 5 golden students here, and this one Russ, we're going to give him a chance. And I was kind of the run all the way through. He looking laughing now, but at the time, so be mindful of it. Not only yes, get fully funded, but if you're not going to get fully funded, make sure you are still treated as top of the cohort if it's at all possible.
We're going to be available at the end of the community in California. Available. So we're not going to get the way you are in law. So, but there are scientists that effectively study that. The political pain.
Well, I don't in any way mean to diminish the difficulty of getting a law degree, but there are 1,001 ways to get a law degree. Get a law degree part-time, you can get a law degree at any period in your life. But if you're thinking about doing research, I think everybody here would tell you, you need dedicated time, you need templated space to get really deep in your thoughts, and trying to do it with a million other distractions is very, very hard to do. But I've known plenty of people who got PhDs and they decided they didn't want to go into academia, so they went and got a law degree. A PhD will more than prepare you for doing a law degree. You don't need both. You don't need both. You don't need both.
All just told you that. One of the other. You need both. You can find a law degree. The one that we don't.
I was in the if you get a PhD, you don't have to be a professor. So in our program, a lot of programs, 30, 40, not more than go on to something else. Other than that, there's thousands of research institutes here, there's nonprofit organizations here, throughout, the DMV region where a lot of PhDs are working. Who have never set foot in the classroom or university. So don't narrowly think of that degree as only about ongoing professor. But it's about research. So whether you're working in state legislatures, right, or you are doing work in nonprofits and activism or what have you, PhD is quite a useful degree. But so are a whole host of other master's degrees. And PhDs are useful in that if you get a funded program, you can get a master's degree usually on the way towards your PhD in a lot of programs. So they'll give you a master's after you finish X number of courses or what have you. So you get one that way, or you can apply separately. But it's up to you. We had a question.
Yeah, so
Normally 9 hours. What do you do?
That's a point. As a recent citizen, the thing that has helped me do in my field is to really do research. Be able to take something that's complicated. It was a challenge at my age to put together the state of research goal first, and then the state. I'm not intimidated now by high level intellectual work. I've gone the process of learning how to organize my research. So I'm not intimidated by that. And that really has helped me do a much better job. I thought I was when I was 40. Now I really feel confident. If you want to level and not the value of motivation, listen, simply continue to be a lawyer. Which requires more degree. If you're intended to do anything else, I would suggest PhD. But so about I would also say.
Yeah. Well, you're gonna have to pick a discipline. Okay. Now, if you do political science, there's artificial boundaries to these disciplines. Like, what's the difference between sociology and political science? Not political science. And if you do either one of those, you can't do political science properly because it's different. Okay, so I'll say it like that. If you take what you're studying, whatever particular research topic is, you take that topic here, you want to do this. Know the way to do it. And be competent at any point in time. So, grad school trains you to be narrow expert, different from what it was 30, 40, 50 years ago. My dad had a PhD in 1978, for example, where then you were really trained more generalist. But a PhD is a doctor in philosophy degree, right? So it assumes that you are, this like high order philosopher that knows a lot of great things about knows a lot about a lot. Well, now that's not the case. The degree now is you end up knowing a lot about very little. So in political science, there are at least 100+ subfields. There are 4 central overarching ones under which several other subfields fit. So the 4 central ones are political theory, American politics, comparative politics, and international relations. Nearly every program will have one of those 4, if not all 4 of them, that's required you to take. In each of those 4, there are other subfields. If you go to the International Political Science Association website or the American Political Science Association website, you'll see subfields, what they call organized sections. So within that, There are several other fields. So like I'm a member of the urban politics section, of the sexuality politics section, of the race, ethnicity, and politics section, because I study political science through those lenses. But if I were interested in history, I would also be part of the American political development section. Because in political science, that subfield is the subfield that intersects with history. And there's a journal that comes along with it. We have a journal here at the library. You can look up the journal, look up a lot of work there. A lot of amazing racial work in terms of American political development. Our resident AP scholar here would be Dr. Kenesha Grant, who does AP.
Can I build on that with one tiny piece you mentioned of the journal? It reminds me, one of the best pieces of advice I ever heard for figuring out if you want to go to grad school is go to a conference and read the program and see if you can identify 5 topics that are of interest. Pick whatever number you want, 5, 10, pick 5 topics and go to those talks. And if at least 1 out of 5 of those talks really energizes you, and you're like, these are my people, I want to study with these people, I want to ask these same questions, this feels like a great group, then you might feel like you're on the right track for doing it. But the conference experience, they're not all wonderful. I've been many duds in my day, but when you can make a connection with someone at a conference, then you start feeling like, yeah, I kind of belong to this guild, or I want these people to accept me as a peer. They're asking really interesting questions, and they're animated by them and passion. And in some ways, this can even transcend the graduate school experience. As I was saying before, you're signing up for a profession. You're not signing up for a subject. And the conference venue is your place to get a handle on what is the whole profession like, and does this feel welcoming to you and inspiring. So it's even above the grad school experience.
I didn't get to a conference. I'm former president of the Association for Ethnic Studies, for example, largest international body of people study ethnic and racial peoples. We have a conference, ethnicstudies.org. You go to the website, you fill out an application. The application asks for your name, your student info, etc., what you're at. Then it asks you to come up with a title. Rough draft title for your presentation and a paragraph that summarizes what we're talking about. Once you get to the conference, you will be on a panel with 2 or 3 other people. They may be professors, maybe other students, depending on the organization that you're in, how they organize the conference, and you present for about 15 to 20 minutes. Most people use PowerPoint on your topic. You then get feedback from your fellow panelists and from the other people in the room. There can be 5 people in the room, there can be 500 people in the room. It depends on what conference you're at and whether or not people like the session that you are assigned to at the time. But most conferences do offer undergraduate student research opportunities. So Ethnic Studies Association does. We have a conference now, you can apply today. Conference is November 4th and 6th in Los Angeles. So that's obviously a great place to go. And they do undergraduate paper awards. The National Conference of Doctoral Science does undergraduate papers as well. We do an annual student association every year. That conference is always in March, always during spring break. And there are a whole host of other conferences, like the New England Political Science Association. That if you don't want to travel far, you can travel within an hour or 2. They have a student conference every year, every November. Their applications are available now as well. I'm happy to talk about more about conferences, but it's a great way to figure out what my grad school.
And you don't have to present to a conference. You can't just register. Some of them data that you're online.
Yes. But if you want student support from your university, then you do have to.
Finance.
So
You're going to have a concentration in that. But typically, whatever program you apply to, it's something given. You wouldn't apply for it unless if you apply to a public policy program, that's what you get. If you apply for a master's degree in political science, you're going to have to identify a particular area that you're studying.
Yes, that's fine. No, you also imagine political science, concentrating in international relations. That's what, so you can do both, you can do both or either. But you have to concentrate, graduate school, you concentrate in a sub-field area. So I concentrated in American politics and political theory. So to this day, I will say I'm an expert in American politics. I specialize in certain areas within American politics. But yes, you can call me to talk about anything having to do with American politics. Do not call me talking about international affairs. I can't help you with that. I know as much about that as Scooby-Doo does. You know, but I can tell you other people who do. And so you're an expert in your field. That's important because it can come out. Whatever program is coming out, that's what's going to get you that wherever you're going next. It won't be in general. It'll be what you focus on. Our department is the only department in the world that allows you to concentrate in Black politics as part of your political science curriculum at the graduate level. Every other program, there are a couple that embrace ethnicity and other kinds of exceptions, but it's the whole Black politics is birthed here, as Dr. Harris discussed, and we're the only PhD program that offers. We're not, there's one other agency that has a PhD in political science, that's North Carolina, but they do not have a concentration in Black politics specifically. So we're the only ones that do this in Black politics. This is the place to go. But you can study those kinds of politics in a variety of places here, within the realm of international affairs or within the realm of political theory. You know, Black politics intersects all of the other traditional areas of political science, where Black politics is everywhere. Thank you. So, you know, again, I know every question is not asked, answered, but we're around, happy to show the right. I have somebody in my class, whole bunch of them, okay? Actively be supportive of it. It's a great idea.